It's Master Slave Morality, and this is an essay that was written by Friedrich Nietzsche. It's one of his first essays in the on the genealogy of morality. Nietzsche argued that there were two fundamental types of morality: master morality and slave morality. Slave morality values things like kindness, humility, and sympathy, while master morality values pride, strength, and nobility. Master morality weighs actions on a scale of good or bad consequences, unlike slave morality, which weighs actions on a scale of good or evil intentions. For Nietzsche, a particular morality is inseparable from the formation of a particular culture, meaning that a culture's language, code, and practices, narratives, and institutions are informed by the struggles between structures. Uh, and it goes on, master morality. Nietzsche defined master morality as morality of the strong-willed. Nietzsche criticizes the view, which he identifies with contemporary British ideology, that good is everything that is helpful and bad is everything that is harmful. He argues proponents of this view have forgotten the origin of its values and is based merely on a non-critical acceptance of habit. What is useful has always been defined as good. Therefore, usefulness is goodness as a value. He continues explaining that in the prehistoric state, the value or non-value of an action was derived from its consequences. But ultimately, there are no moral phenomena at all, only moral interpretations of phenomena. For strong-willed men, the good is the noble, strong, and powerful, while the bad is the weak, cowardly, and timid, as well as petty. Essence of morality is nobility. Other qualities that are often valued in master morality are open-mindedness, courage, truthfulness, trust, and an accurate sense of one's self-worth. Master morality begins in the noble man with a spontaneous idea of the good. Then the idea of bad develops as what is not good. The noble type of man experiences itself as determining values. It does not need approval, it judges. What is harmful to me is harmful in itself. It knows itself to be that which first accords honor to things. It is value creating. In this sense, the master morality is the full recognition that oneself is the measure of all moral truths. Insofar as something is helpful to the strong-willed man, it is like what he values in himself. Therefore, the strong-willed man values such things as good because they aid him in a lifelong process of self-actualization through to power. Slave morality, however, masters are creators of morality. Slaves respond to master morality with slave morality. Unlike master morality, which is sentiment, slave morality is based on resentiment, devaluing that which the master values and the slave does not have. A master morality originates in the strong, slave morality originates in the weak. Because slave morality to oppression, it vilifies its oppressors. Slave morality is the inverse of master morality. As such, it is characterized by pessimism and cynicism. Slave morality is created in opposition to whatever master morality values as good. Slave morality does not aim at exerting one's will by strength, but by careful subversion. It does not seek to transcend the masters, but to make them slaves as well. The essence of slave morality is utility. The good is what is useful for the whole community, not the strong. Nietzsche saw this as a contradiction. Since the powerful are few in number compared to the masses of the weak gain power by corrupting the strong into believing that the causes of slavery are evil, as are the qualities they originally could not choose because of their weakness. By saying humility is voluntary, slave morality avoids admitting that their humility was in the beginning forced upon them by a master. Biblical principles of turning the other cheek, humility, charity, and pity are results of universalizing the plight of the slave unto all humankind, and thus enslaving the masters as well. The democratic movement, and you're going to love this, Boogie, the democratic movement is the heir to Christianity, the political manifestation of slave morality because of its obsession with freedom and equality. The Jews achieved that miracle of inversion of values, thanks to which life on earth has, for a couple millennia, acquired a new and dangerous fascination. The prophets fused rich, godless, evil, violent, sensual into one, and were the first to coin world as a term of infamy. It is this inversion of value with which is involved the employment of the word poor as a synonym for holy and friend, that the significance of the Jewish people resides. With them, there begins a slave revolt in morals. The society struggle between master and slave morality recurs historically. According to Nietzsche, ancient Greek and Roman societies were grounded in master morality. The heroic hero is a strong-willed man, and the classical roots of the Iliad and Odyssey exemplified Nietzsche's master morality. He calls the heroes men of noble culture, giving a substantive example of master morality. Historically, master morality was defeated as the slave morality of Christianity spread throughout the empire. The essential struggle between cultures has always been between the Roman, master, strong, and the Judean, slave, weak. Nietzsche condemns the triumph of slave morality in the West, saying that the democratic movement is the collective degeneration of man. He claimed that the nascent democratic movement of his time was essentially slavish and weak. Weakness conquered strength. Slave conquered master. Resentment conquered sentiment. The resentment Nietzsche calls priestly vindictiveness, which is based on the jealous weak seeking to enslave the strong and thus erode the basis for power itself by pulling the powerful down. Such movements, according to Nietzsche, inspired the most intelligent revenge of the weak. Nietzsche saw democracy and Christianity as the same emasculating impulses which sought to make everyone equal by making everyone a slave. Nietzsche did not necessarily believe that everyone should adopt master morality as the be-all, end-all behavior. He thought that the revolution of morals would correct the inconsistencies in both master and slave moralities. But he asserted that for the individual, master morality was preferable to slave. Walter Kaufmann disagrees with Nietzsche, actually preferred master morality to slave. He certainly gives slave morality a more thorough critique, but this is partly because he thought of slave morality as society's more imminent danger. Most of society today, I'll just add this and then get off the mic. Most of society today is slave morality. This democracy that we have, he's right, just adds into the slave mentality.
Power. Wow. Power Tuesday. I'm sorry. I had a full load. I was asleep. Thank you, Mr. Blaine. And thank you, Miss Diane. That is fire. Master slave morality.
Yeah, I want to say, first of all, thank you, Ms. Diane, for reading that. And Blaine, I don't know if you had caught what I had said earlier, but I did get a chance to check out the video. And, like, you know, my brain is like, pow. But I think it actually shows me why I probably, you know, think about things the way I think about them. So I love that essay. That was a beautiful essay, man.
Yeah, Miss Di. Thank you for that. That was something that's Powerful Tuesdays. It hit it right on the nail, because we sure as hell are living in democracy slavery, for real, for real.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Diane. I have watched the video earlier. Big Brother Blame had put me up on the same video, and it's really powerful. And thank you, Toe Jam, for blessing your presence off in the room this morning.
Oh yeah, I forgot to speak to Toe Jam. My bad. What's up, baby? I mean, this one here, man. Y'all just trying to stroke me or something, trying to, I don't know, have my brain just on fire right now. I actually wanted to listen to it again, and I didn't know she was about to get ready to read it again. It sounded somewhat different from the guy on that video, you know, but I heard the same similarities all through it. So, yeah, I got to get me a copy of that essay.
What's up, Boogie Boy? Yeah, man. The revolution will not be televised, man.
Yo, Slow Jam, top of the morning, brah. Yeah, I'm just shouting you out. I'm getting back off the rover, listening in today.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And Miss Diane, thank you again. And what up, fam? What up?
They like, oh, look at you. You know, you need to calm down. You need to pipe down. I always used to feel like, nah, man, like you should be up too. You should be doing it. You should be feeling the same kind of way. I'm not telling you to shit on nobody, but you know, if you made an accomplishment, or you just woke up today and feel good about yourself in a certain way, you should be able to express that without worrying about somebody else who may not be in that space. So who's really telling you to be humble at times? You know, what place is that really coming from? Is that from this, like he's mentioned, slave mentality? Or is that, I mean, what is that from? Who made that up to even be that way? Because I always felt like, you know, like when I used to see Kanye West, I loved the way he acted. And people I used to be around would be like, oh man, he arrogant and this and that. I'm just like, damn, dude really feel confident about himself. Why are you trying to tear that down? But is that a slave mentality?
I'm with you there, Boogie. That's just like when Brother Blame was talking yesterday, you know what I'm saying? And that's why I came back with the comment that I said to him, you know what I'm saying? And hey, look here, it's basically the same thing what you're saying. You just put it all in just one.
Yeah, and let's not forget, man, we teach our offspring how to be slaves and the way that we raise them. So this is generational. Like it's a sad state of affairs, man. It's scary, you know, once you really let it manifest, or I mean, marinate in your mind, man. When you let this really sink in, man, we're doing a lot wrong, and it's learned. You know what I mean? It's taught generation to generation. We could do better. We could do a lot better.
All the way down to piggyback off of what you said about the offspring. You know, that's when I go back to my, you know, how y'all know, you know, I'm not putting my hands on my children, man. I feel like that's something, because you best believe that man up there in that castle, them powers to be, they're not beating their kids, man. Come on, man. They passed that down. They made the other folk feel like that's what they need. Actually, they did it to the other folk, and subconsciously the other folk did it to their offspring. So that's why I choose not to put my hands on my children. I'm like, for what? I'm tearing them down. Like I said, the last time I did it, my son, the way he looked at me, I was like, what the hell am I doing? Like at the time I was 210, and this dude is like 30 pounds, 35, 40 pounds. I mean, like, what does that say about me if that's the course I gotta take to try to get my kid to understand what I'm trying to get him to do, or what I'm trying to get him not to do, you know, prevent him from doing. I mean, that says a lot about me, man. That shows how weak I really am, if that's the only way I could deal with my child. So yeah, like you said, it's generational. And when you say that, I just thought about, you know, that whole spanking thing. It's just like, you know, I'm so glad I let that go, man, because I believe all of that is generational, and I know it comes from the other side, because them other people, they don't get down like that.
Well, I want y'all to notice. A carefully crafted conversation or presentation by Mr. Nietzsche, and what is missing. What it contains and what is missing. So what Nietzsche didn't deal with, he didn't deal with fear. Because Nietzsche himself, if you look very carefully at what he said and what he didn't say, he wrote he wrote the thing, or his perspective leans towards the hunter, not the lion, and he doesn't even deal with the crimes of the hunter, and he makes it his argument seem as though you can't do two things at one time. You can't convict the hunter while taking personal responsibility over yourself and having, honor and the virtues that he said that the master mentality has. He tries to lean that to the fact that the two things can't be done at the same time. So I take issue with him with that. Also, I take issue with the fact that I believe he's doing that from a state of fear. So if he convicted the power structure in what he said, that he would, face some reprisal from that. Also, he only dealt with that from the standpoint of where he was. He never touched on colonialized people or anything like that. I think that sort of dehumanizes them, and I don't know. I found that to be missing, and I think that was carefully crafted. He died in 1900, so all that was there was enough of that going on for him to address it in some type of way. Come on.
I posted a thing on the glass. It's a little discussion narrative, and basic the emphasis in it. Harry Staton expresses a challenge. Where Nietzsche's invited us to reflect on what he says. It says, "What are we to say about this overwhelming spectacle of cruelty, stupidity, and suffering? What stance is there for us to adopt with respect to history? What judgment can we pass on it? Is it all a big mistake? Christianity attempted to recuperate the suffering of history by projecting a divine plan that assigns it a reason in the here and now and a recompense later. But liberalism is too humane to endorse this explanation. There is no explanation, only the brute fact. But the brute facts we are left with is even harder to stomach than the old explanation. So left liberalism packages in a new narrative, a moral narrative, according to which all of those lives ground up in the machinery of history are assigned an intelligible role as victims of oppression and injustice against the awesome, thus it was, of history. We set the overawing majesty of the thus it ought to have been. This is some pretty powerful discussion points. We try to make sense of suffering throughout history by an appeal to morality. Morality turns suffering into injustice, and then we have someone to blame. That's how we work. We always want somebody to blame. We find this reassuring, but how truthful is the response, and how much confidence can we place in the values we appeal to? Nietzsche argues that the condemnation of suffering is in tension with greatness. It goes on, a different objection. Nietzsche commits a genetic fallacy in attacking conventional morality by looking at its origins. Just because morality originated in the resentment of slaves does not mean that we should reject morality. The origins of an idea don't determine whether that idea is true, false, good, or bad. Compare Coleridge composed poem Kubla Khan, while he was under the influence of opium. This doesn't tell us anything about whether the poem is good or bad. Nietzsche can reply that this misunderstands his use of genealogy. First, our intuitions about values are formed by history, so we can only understand them by historical investigation. Any other approach will appeal to moral intuitions without understanding their historical nature. Traditional ways of doing moral philosophy cannot succeed. Second, Nietzsche does not mean identify just the past origins of morality. Both master and slave moralities continue, evolve, and are mixed up in us today. The motives present an origin of slave morality continue to motivate morality today. Uh, I think this. You're right. This was written long ago. It was republished in 67, I believe, but it's just as relevant today as it ever has been. And we see this every day with when you take divides on morality and the political gamut. There are those that say, okay, everything across the board should be equal. We should all have the same thing. And that means those that are rich need to come down to the level of those that are not so rich. But what about those of us that aren't so wealthy being empowered to be at the same level as those that are in a position of wealth? Why does it always have to be coming down to a position of uh, being poor? Or why do we have to look at it as bringing down, quote unquote, master to our level? Why can't we rise up to the level of master where we want to be?
I'm with you on that. Yeah, that's what I say. That's why I have a problem with, I make this statement sometimes with people how and Alan Watts had said something about this in one of his lectures, how it's people on this side of the fence that talk about, like say the rich people on this side of the fence talk about the poor people on that side and vice versa. And I always say, and I understand because I've been around both. And I understand how neither understands either, and they ain't even trying to understand either. So I'm like, why can't you just, yeah, like you said, why do you have to be pulled down? Why can't you make the moves on your side if you struggling and this and that? Why can't you make certain moves, i.e., let these companies have it up there, up where where they can't see the daylight? Why can't you just do it in that way that'll bring you up to that point? I don't understand. Well, I understand. I think it's that whole slave mentality and the blame game and stuff like that.
I was just about to say, because it's easier to sit in your own misery and wallow in that misery and say, oh, woe is me, I don't know what to do, it's just the way it is, than it is to say, you know what, I accept responsibility for my situation, and the only one that's going to change that situation is me. Now, we had the whole discussion on the heat this morning. We could sit here and whine and snivel about, oh, the heat in this and it's so miserable, but what are we going to do about it? Are we going to still be sitting in the same place? I was just about to say, because it's easier to sit in your own misery and wallow in that misery and say, oh, woe is me, I don't know what to do, it's just the way it is, than it is to say, you know what, I accept responsibility for my situation, and the only one that's going to whole winter, and we're still going to be complaining and blaming CR England, because at some point it stops being their fault. It stops being their responsibility because you're the one that chooses to do nothing about it. And that's the powerful thing. You choose your future. You choose what you will or will not tolerate. You choose where you are in life. If you don't like where you are, then get up, pull up your big girl panties, and get to stepping. Whether it's better or not, you don't know until you're there. So pull them up and start stepping and make it up as you go along, but change your situation. There are so many people all over the world and this country that whine and snivel and complain every day about how they don't have enough to eat, they don't have this, they don't have that. But what are you doing to fix that, as opposed to sitting and wallowing and saying, well, it's the company's fault, or I can't get a job because this, or I can't get a job for that. I listened to my ex-son-in-law complain repeatedly, I'm an ex-felon, I can't get a job. Okay, well, I happen to know for a fact that that was just him sitting and sniveling, wallowing in his own pity, because I know that there are felons, ex-felons on this channel that said, I will not allow that to be my narrative. I won't allow that to I'm missing the word I'm looking for, but to identify me. That's not what I am. That's not who I am. I deserve better. I am better. Out of the slave thought process, you've brought yourselves to a position where you demand respect.
Mm. This is some fire, boy. Crickets. Got them going crazy, Miss D. Got them gerbils in their heads just going crazy, boy. That wheel is on fire. That hamster wheel on fire.
And then the word you might been looking for, Miss D, was you ain't gonna let nobody hinder you. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm always reaching for the moon.
Right, because the human mind and heart is capable of doing it all at the same time.
Define you. That's the wording I was looking at. I was so passionate about what I was saying, I couldn't come up with a very, very simple word as define. You don't have to let what's happened in the past or what's going on in the politics of this country define who you are as a man, as a woman, as a mother, a father. You don't have to allow that to define you. Yeah, some stuff happened and some things didn't go the way they were supposed to, and maybe I was right, wrong, or indifferent, but that doesn't define who I am.
And I just in the interest of full disclosure, I just heard about Nietzsche like 2 days ago. I guess the more that I've been looking or digging, I guess I have been familiar with his work. I just didn't know it was his work. I didn't know it was other people, riding off of his coattails. So I like the power discussion, the master slave discussion, and I think Blaine hit it out the park when he talks about the story of the hunter and not the hunted. But yeah, we're gonna have to be able to do both. But can I throw this into when I jumped in, I guess you were reading the part where he talks about morality and how the Greeks and the Iliad had anything to do with morality, et cetera, et cetera. He credited the Greeks or being master morality, I think. Yeah, that kind of, I don't know, that kind of made me ill a little bit, knowing that the Greeks didn't really come up with that original. But the story is still, I still appreciate the end result of that story, the difference between the master and the slave mentality.
Yeah, Marvin just said to me, he said, do you realize you have an entire group of truck drivers talking about Nietzsche?
Oh nah, Blaine. Alan Watts is a more of a religious philosopher. More importantly, with the Catholic Church. So he don't really, he's awesome, man. If you just check out some of his videos on some of the things he talk about, he definitely don't protect that establishment at all, But his stuff is more geared towards religion and the philosophy of with dealing with religion, not like anything political or like that. But he touches base on a lot of things. But I don't think he would be along the lines of this Nietzsche guy. I was going to say too. I'm not sure if because we can't ask him like are you protecting the establishment? But I think what he's saying, like they say, is nothing new under the sun. I believe it's the same whether like Miss Diane said, it's the same from at the time of his death to now. The same qualities with people are still happening the same way. So, and I don't think it's a such thing as like, see, when you got the slave mentality, you're thinking that somebody has to tear down the establishment. But what you fail to realize is you can be that change that tears down. If you got a real problem with that, like us in trucking, I believe all of us in here right now could be the owners of Swift and Schneider and all of that if we got ourselves together and started making the moves that we need to make, because we can knock them out of business today. We can stop every truck right now and all of them would be living off they off the funds that they done made, but their whole operation to be shut down. So I don't think you really even need to condemn the establishment. All you need to do is get out of your slave mentality and do what you need to do to make yourself be at a point where that you feel like you want to be in. And I think a lot of people, you know what I'm saying? I think a lot of people ain't willing to do that. They want somebody to stand up and talk about the establishment or put them down. I don't put. That's why I tell people I don't put them down. I'm gonna go up there with them by any means necessary. I'm gonna go up there because my morality is totally opposite than everybody else. You know what I'm saying? So I think like I say, I can't judge the man because I can't sit down with him right now and ask like, hey, were you protecting this because you didn't say this and you didn't say that? Like I say, that sounds like the people on the other side just pointing fingers at them over there. Bump them. Get out of your slave mentality. You can change all of that. You can turn them into whatever you want to turn them into.
Well, I agree with that wholeheartedly, Boogie, wholeheartedly. And I do apologize. I was confused. I said Alan Watts, but I was thinking Alan West. That was my mistake. I had to go and do a quick Google. Alan West is the guy who I say stands with the establishment, and all what I said. Alan Watts is a different guy. Thank you, Boogie, for making me go correct that. And I think that we should maybe do Alan Watts next. And Boogie, the responsibility is on you to tell us what piece of work that you're going to want to bring forward next week on Alan Watts for us to contemplate on. Come on back.
Oh nah, Blaine. Alan Watts is a more of a religious philosopher. More importantly, with the Catholic Church.
Research. You let me know what piece you want, and I'll research it and pull it up and do my part.
Well, I don't know, man. Alan Watts may offend some people. Nah, he shouldn't. Actually, he should. See, that's that slave mentality, man. He shouldn't offend no one. And I think you said this Sunday, Blaine. You said, when you stand on what you stand on, when you 100% with yours, nobody can offend you. And that's something that I had to understand over the years. If I was still being shaken up by something somebody said because of, my thoughts, then something's still wrong with me. I'm unsure. But when you are okay, you don't have to go through the cognitive dissonance. You won't go through that because it's okay. And see, I take a stand too where I'm still open to everybody's ideas. Like I tell you all the time, Blaine, when it comes to your Islamic faith, there's a lot in the Islamic faith that I'm like, man, I'm down with that. You know what I mean? I'm still so open. That's the problem that I have with a lot of the different religions is the fact that, man, this man won't even listen to this dude. And my whole deal is like, damn, what if? Like, I got to say to myself, what if I'm wrong? I know I've taken a stand to say, I'm willing to go that route because I feel confident within my thoughts. But you know what I mean? That's the problem that I have with a lot of it is, Jehovah saying this, they saying this, and they saying that. Like, man, when y'all gonna come together and like and I mean on a low note, a calm, just converse with each other and just like let's figure this thing out. Because I think if they all came together, man, we might get some real answers then. I think that's the problem. That division is the problem, man. So yeah, I'll bring I got a lecture that I listened to, but it's kind of long, so I don't think we could really do it on Zello. But I would like for him to just speak for himself. That way, nothing is misconstrued or anything. But it's actually a lecture that, and maybe I can just take, go back there, check out the certain parts, break it down in Final Cut or something, and maybe just take sections of it, and we can kind of, just sort of, talk about it after that. But I'm gonna listen to a couple of the different lectures that he has, and maybe I could try to pull something up.
Well, don't overwork yourself on the Boogie. we can deal if he has a concept, you know, we can deal with the concept without necessarily going into something that, you know, might take a lot of work on your part. But you know, we can just deal with certain quotes or whatever, and then folks will have plenty of time to go and look up reading material and YouTube videos to check out while they're driving, listen to while they're driving, so they can kind of, you know, get a more educated opinion. But I think it would be cool for us to go from one to another on Power Tuesdays and have some discussions about something that maybe we ain't never checked out before.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you know, put it up there, put the information up, and then everybody can go look at it, and then we can come in on Tuesday and have a discussion, you know. If if it's important, you know, you'll make the time to listen and to do it. I think bringing some literature in here and and some critical discussions is an amazing thing, and I think it's powerful. I think that nobody can ever have too much education. And you're right, Boogie, as long as you keep an open mind and know that your way of thinking isn't the definitive way of thinking, because everything's open to interpretation.
Tenfold. Yeah, I wouldn't mind putting it together, Blaine, at all. You know, I would, you know, because I was always that type, man. And like when I was younger, I was always scared. Like, you know, say somebody said they worship the devil or something, you know, and off the break, your brain will click because of conditioning and everything. Your brain will automatically click to pass judgment on that person without even just sitting down for a second, just saying, all right, let me see what he's talking about. Because him even saying that could mean something totally different than what you just, you know, made up in your mind. You know, that story that you done came about. So, you know, I was always the type as a young kid that always wanted to know, like when the Jehovah's knocked on our door. I used to be like, damn, why we got to shut off the lights and run to the back? And my mother like, be quiet. I'm like, how we know they ain't talking about something? Like, where did that door come from? Where did that no, you don't talk to them. Where did that come from? When I used to see the Nation of Islam on our corner, because they are the ones that came in and cleaned up my neighborhood. But when I saw them on the corner, I'm like, why can't I go talk to them? My mother see me talking to one of the brothers on the corner, and she's like, no, you don't talk to them. You get it in the house. I'm like, why not? What about if he got the good news, the gospel? What about if he holds the gospel? I can't go holler at him. I never understood that, man.
To what if it offends somebody? Okay, well, if it offends you, then be offended, because last I checked, this wasn't a politically correct uh, situation where everybody has to agree, and if somebody gets offended, the world ends. That's outside of this room. That's outside of Sovereign Roads. If it's in the nature of critical discussion, you know, my opinion's going to differ from yours periodically and vice versa. But you got to understand, it's a critical discussion. It isn't personal. Nobody should be taking anything that's said here in these discussions as something that's a personal attack or a personal anything towards them. You know, it's just critical analysis, and it's good, clean, healthy conversation.
Most definitely. I love the these critical talks we have in here, man. I think that's the main thing that kept me around, even when we was over in the other room, when we could have these kind of discussions, because I used to be afraid to say it. I used to be afraid at times, man, because I understand the behavior of humans. I used to be afraid to say, man, I don't eat meat, man. Because, you know, it's like, I know what's going to come behind that. I know the automatic response. You know, the number one is where you get your protein. You know, and I get tired of that question, man. That's like, I'm like, you know what I mean? But you're right, Miss Diane. Should nobody be offended? I think this is the healthy way to live. I think when you close off into a box, I think that's when you're dead. When you close off and say this is what it is and I know this, that's when you're dead. That's mental death right there, because you ain't letting nothing else in. What about somebody else got some other gospel that you ain't never heard of, and that might spark something in you? But I think people are afraid of that. I think that's a part of a slave mentality too. People are afraid for something to spark up in their brain, something new. You know, people are afraid of the new. And that's one thing that I say to myself, that I want to continuously make sure I stay open with my children, because they coming up in a different time and they gonna have new information and new ideas. And I don't want to be quick to just close them off and say, nah, we ain't doing that. You know, that's, first of all, that's disrespectful to that child. That's disrespectful to the idea of or the notion of evolution. And I think that's not right, man. So yeah, you're right. Should nobody be offended? Like Brother Blaine said on Sunday, if you offended, then something must be wrong with you.
I think you're 100% right. I've thought some things and been, you know, steadfast in my belief. The key word there is my belief, only to be shown that, just because that's what I believe didn't mean it was the only way to look at it. Uh, and I've changed that belief on many, many topics. Um, I'm excited. I look forward to looking at different pieces of literature and different commentaries as we go through the next few weeks. It just excites me.
Yeah, it's like my therapy, Miss Diane. I'd yearn for this, and you can't. These days you can't get it, man. I was talking to somebody last night, and they talking about how much weight Rihanna gained, and I just shake. I'm just like, man, I can't do this, man. You know what I mean? I can't do it, man. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this. I've heard the word Nietzsche plenty of times, but I never got turned on. And Blaine, I appreciate the video you sent me, because I like that kind of stuff, man. And it really aligns with a lot of my thought process and the problems that we're having out here. Just take, for instance, in the so-called, y'all know I hate colors, but for lack of a better word, in the black community, when I see like the movements, the marches and this and that, man, I just shake my head, man, because I know it's a way of getting what you want, and the way they going about doing it ain't the way. And then what would I be called? Oh, I'd be called a coon, especially if I'm dealing with a Caucasian woman. I'm definitely called a coon. So, I love having these conversations, man. I love like widening the mental, and yeah, man, I love this room, man.
I hadn't, like I've said before, I wasn't really exposed to different cultures as a kid. Shoot, I lived in a white community until high school. Um, but it really truly hit me, the differences. My godson and I were watching Rosewood. I think it was Rosewood. Powerful, powerful movie that just shows you the extent of racism and cultural bias, ethnocentricity in this country. And Clifton looked at me and said, Miss C, because now y'all are going to know my first name is Cecilia. He said, Miss C, why are they treating that man that way? And I had to have a real conversation with the boy and explain to him that, back in that era, back in that time, uh, I'd have been hung for, and he'd have been in trouble, for the relationship that we have, because I treated that boy like my own son. And it wasn't something that was acceptable. And if you did have that kind of relationship, it was just, on the surface, it looks like it was so if you got into trouble, you'd have somebody to blame for your trouble, because they ain't going to take the word of a black man or a mix, any other thing over different cultures as a kid. Shoot, I lived in a white community until high school. Now y'all are going to know my first name, and he'd have been in trouble, for the relationship that we have, because I treated that boy like my own son. And it wasn't something that was acceptable. And if you did have that kind of relationship, it was just, on the surface, it looks like it was so if you got into trouble, you'd have somebody to blame for your trouble, because they ain't going to take the word of a black man or a mix, any other thing over that of a white person. My goodness, white people are infallible. They're not capable of lying, right? It's just, it's nonsense. Um, but those are things that happen out here every day, and it's becoming more prevalent. Instead of getting away from it, the more knowledgeable we become, the more prevalent it's becoming. We're going the reverse of where we should be going. And it's discussions like this, it's rooms like this that are going to make the difference when we start educating the people and saying, look, this is what they want us to do. They want us to fight between ourselves. Because when we unite, we will become the most powerful source of correction on earth when we unite as one people, because that's what we are. We are one people. Color doesn't matter. Ethnicity doesn't matter. Quit being so ethnocentric that you can't look beyond yourself and look to the rest of the world. That's when change will happen.
No, no, we should just sit in here and read Mark Twain all day. Yeah, let's read some Mark Twain. Hey, Boogie. Hey, man. I don't know where people get that thought. I ain't never, like, never, like, as much as, you know, we've talked and been on the phone and met up in Louisville. Coon is not a word that ever comes to mind. So, I feel like I want to fight that battle with you. Like that, you are far from that. Anyway, that's all I got, man. I'm gonna leave it there. But I'm definitely. Oh, this is what I wanted to say. So after hearing that and after reading that, and I'm looking to see who's all on here. I'm wondering, like, how many of us has come to the epiphany that we've been living in that slave mentality for so long, or for, you know, up until now, or at least have those tendencies. And, you know, and then I guess the question should be, how do we turn the corner collectively with each other and in our own individual lives? How do we stop living in the slave mentality? And I don't know how to craft this. I've been holding on to this. I don't know how to craft it, but I refuse to believe that the Indians that were here on this land were slaves. You know, they were mentally speaking, they were slaves. That's why they were able to be conquered. And I refuse to believe, you know, and I'm gonna go, you know, back into the beginning of the time that the Egyptians were slaves, or the Africans that were brought over here in bondage were slaves, mentally speaking. So I don't know. You know, I think with the Indians, it was gunpowder. That's how they lost their land. I don't know that the Africans were docile. I don't know what it was that they just, you know, that they were able to be conquered and brought over here. But just a little something to think about.
I think a lot of it was just you know, fear, and I think Blaine had touched something about the fear, how he didn't mention that fear, but I think I mean, I would want to think that that's like obvious, that it was fear mongering that allowed all of that to happen, and then once they gained control, then it just became like a norm, like the slave mentality that a lot of us have now is just like the norm. Like you could just get up and you could just say, man, I gotta go up in here, man. I gotta feed my family. I gotta, you know what I mean? I think it's just normal now. Like you said earlier too, Toe Jam, it's generational. So, you know, you heard your mama said, she heard her mama said, and she heard her mama said. So I think it's just a mentality. And to answer your question, the way I see changing it is we really need to get deep within ourselves, man, and get a understanding of us and understand that we are a slave. Because you gotta admit that part first. If you don't admit that, if you run around to me, I ain't no slave, I got a house and car and blah, I make this, blah. You know, if you run around like that, then, you know, that's the problem. So I think first you got to realize that you are a slave, and not in the fad way of saying it. Like, you know, Kanye West had the song New Slaves, and the people like, yeah, man, we slaves. Not in that way. I'm talking about serious, straight up, like admitting to yourself that, yes, I am a slave and I need to change this. And then you need to start breaking some of those tendencies.
To what if it offends somebody? Okay, well, if it offends you, then be offended because last I checked, this wasn't a politically correct uh, situation where everybody has to agree, or and if somebody gets offended, the world ends. That's outside of this room. That's outside of Sovereign Roads. If it's in the nature of critical discussion, my opinion's going to differ from yours periodically and vice versa. But you got to understand, it's a critical discussion. It isn't personal. Nobody should be taking anything that's said here in these discussions as something that's a personal attack or a personal anything towards them. It's just critical analysis, and it's good, clean, healthy conversation.
Most definitely. I love the critical these critical talks we have in here, man. I think that's the main thing that kept me around, even when we was over in the other room, when we could have these kind of discussions, because I used to be afraid to say, I used to be afraid at times, man, because I understand the behavior of humans. I used to be afraid to say, man, I don't eat meat, man. Because, it's like I know what's going to come behind that. I know the automatic response. The number one is where you get your protein. And I get tired of that question, man. That's like, I'm like, you know what I mean? But you're right, Miss Diane. Should nobody be offended? I think this is the healthy way to live. I think when you close off into a box, I think that's when you're dead. When you close off and say this is what it is, and I know this, that's when you're dead. That's mental death right there, because you ain't letting nothing else in. What about somebody else got some other gospel that you ain't never heard of, and that might spark something in you? But I think people are afraid of that. I think that's a part of a slave mentality too. People are afraid for something to spark up in their brain, something new. People are afraid of the new. And that's one thing that I say to myself, that I want to continuously make sure I stay open with my children, because they coming up in a different time, and they going to have new information and new ideas. And I don't want to be quick to just close them off and say, nah, we ain't doing that. That's, first of all, that's disrespectful to that child. That's disrespectful to the idea of or the notion of evolution. And I think that's not right, man. So yeah, you're right. Should nobody be offended? Like Brother Blaine said on Sunday, if you offended, then something must be wrong with you.
I think you're 100% right. I've thought some things and been, steadfast in my belief. The key word there is my belief, only to be shown that, just because that's what I believe didn't mean it was the only way to look at it. And I've changed that belief on many, many topics. I'm excited. I look forward to looking at different pieces of literature and different commentaries as we go through the next few weeks. It just excites me.
Yeah, this like my therapy, Miss Diane. I'd yearn for this, and you can't. These days you can't get it, man. I was talking to